Mm. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Monday's training video. We're going to be talking about paw wiping, teaching your dog to wipe their own paws on a mat. So let's jump right in. All right, I'm just going to talk real briefly about in what kind of context you might want to set this up, having your dog wipe their own paws. Most of the material today will cover how to get that paw wiping started, like how to get your dog to make that motion so you can reinforce it and then build on it. And then I'll give one example of fading out a prompt where, I started with something that was likely to get one of my dogs to do that wiping motion, but I didn't want to keep that item in the training or in the sort of real life context when I was going to use paw wiping. So I'll just show you some example steps of how I got rid of that so the dog was just wiping their paws on the mat, which is what I wanted at the end of training. All right, so paw wiping setup. Ways that you might want to use this. You might just have a mat by the back door or the front door, like we've talked about in the past few weeks. We've looked at examples of how to use a mat by the door to get your dog's paws clean without any training, just with kind of luring them around, getting them to move their feet around. Today, what's different today is that we're talking about getting them to deliberately wipe those paws on the mat. You may use one outside of a foot bath, and I think that's what we covered last week, was getting your dog to use a foot bath to wash off mud. And something I've been experimenting with recently is using like a textured or kind of scrubby rubber mat in the foot bath or in a pool or something, so that you get the combined action of the water and some kind of scrubbing without you having to handle your dog's paws. This is still all stuff they're doing on their own. Here are just 3 pictures of those setups: the nice soft mat by the back door, mats and towels by a kiddie pool I was using as a foot bath for the dogs. And then in the far right, that's a black rubber mat that has a bunch of little like kind of stiff rubber fingers sticking up that give you more kind of scrubbing action if you're trying to get mud or something caked onto your dog's paws off a little more easily, again, without touching their paws. All right, so big picture when you're training your dog to wipe their paws, the first thing you have to do, and this is often the toughest step, is to get them to do some kind of wiping or digging motion with their paws so you can reinforce it. Once you've got your dog doing that motion, you want to kind of fade out whatever it is you use to get them started if it's not part of the final picture you want for the behavior. So, for example, we'll look at some videos where I use things like a nail board or a toy to prompt my dog to kind of paw at something, but I didn't want that toy or the nail board at the end of training. I just wanted the dog to wipe their paws on the mat. So we do have to get rid of those prompts or cues or whatever we start out with before we get to the end of training. I'm not going to go over this today, but we did talk about this in the past when we talked about teaching our dog to file their own nails on a nail board. And I'll link to that when I get the blog finished up with this video embedded in it. You'll want to increase the number of sort of paw wipes per treat, so you're getting a decent amount of paw wiping per treat. And then you want to train in any and all contexts that you want to be able to use this behavior in. So maybe you mostly want your dog to wipe their paws at the back door, but you also might want them to, say, wipe their paws before they get into the car after you've been on a hike, or wipe their paws after they get out of the bathtub in the house. So you just want to make sure that the places where you want this behavior to work, you're going to practice it. And you may need to do some training steps, earlier training steps, to work up to that final training step in paw wiping, even if you have previously trained it all the way through, say, outside or at the back door. If you go to a new context, you might need to back up a few steps again. All right, so getting paw wiping started is, like I said, probably the biggest challenge for most people. And this is often true for any sort of behavior your dog isn't already just doing frequently on their own. So if you're going to do this, think about, when is my dog already using their paws? When are they already like manipulating objects with their paws? And how could I capitalize on that for this training? A really common way to get paw wiping started, and actually this is similar to getting scratch the nail board started for that self nail filing kind of training, is hiding the treats under something and then waiting till the dog does digging motions at the thing that the treats are under and rewarding that. So for paw wiping, we can stick treats under a mat or under something on top of the mat and see if our dog digs and then reward that. Not all dogs will do that readily, however. You can use a different prop or prompt that your dog already paws, if say they paw a toy or something, and then fade it out. And again, I'll go over an example of that today. The 3 prompts I'm going to show video examples of are a scratch board that a dog has already been trained to scratch for nail filing, and how I use that to then transfer that kind of scratching motion to a mat. If your dog already knows how to shake on cue, like you put your hand out and they'll put their paw in your hand, you can use that to get paw wiping started. And also show a toy example. If you've got a toy that your dog paws already, you could use that. Oops. Okay, let's take a look at just the video examples of using various prompts or props to get this behavior going. All right, so hiding treats under the mat and then rewarding digging. Some dogs love this. You hide treats under something, they'll go crazy digging, and then, hey, you've got a behavior to start with in your training. Some dogs will just use their nose. So there's Juno digging at the mat. And I tossed her an additional treat. Now there, she just did one. I rewarded it. You can see the problem that you will get some digging up of the mat sometimes. But once you stop hiding the treats underneath the mat, you get less of that. Here's another digging setup. Now, Pancake, I have to say, is one of those dogs where I tried probably 8 or 9 variations of hiding treats under stuff to try to get him to use his paws. And he would not. He just kept manipulating things with his nose. So this is one example in which I did get a single paw wipe. So I just wanted to show you a different setup. What I have here is the mat I ultimately want to use for paw wiping. That's the red one. I have this rubber bath mat under it that has holes in it that kind of would contain treats. And then I have a little piece of yoga mat over it. And so there was my digging motion, and I did reinforce that, but I didn't get it again. All right, so I didn't reinforce it, obviously. I tried to reinforce it. But if you've got a dog who likes to dig, that might be the easiest way to get this paw wiping motion started. If you have any questions or comments as I go through this, please do put them under the video and I will see them. I'm interested if anyone watching this live or as a recording already has trained their dog to scratch a nail board. If you have, this is another way to get your dog to wipe their paws. And I'll show you just the first couple steps I did with my dog Jasper. So here's a nail board. I have it between my knees there, and it's just a piece of scrap wood with some abrasive, self-adhesive tape, like the kind of stuff you put on outdoor steps for traction. He already has been trained to scratch this to file his nails. So that's what it looks like when he normally would file his nails. He'll lift his foot up and then drag it down to wear his nails down. Now, how do I transfer this onto the mat? I'll go through this more thoroughly, but the next step I did was put it flat on top of the mat. So you can see how you basically have that digging or wiping motion already if you've trained a nail board, and now you just got to transfer it over to the mat. All right, shake. Anybody have their dog shaking on cue already? They'll put their paw in your hand. This is a pretty easy way to get some paw wiping started also. So in this example, what I've done is I'm actually using the nail board. You could use anything that's that can support the mat. I'm putting the mat up at an angle because I can more easily get the dog dragging their paw along it at this angle. And then I can lower it down over successive steps, successive approximations to what I want at the end of the training. But here I'm asking him to shake. And then when he puts his paw up, I move my hand away And you see I'm getting a little bit of dragging that paw down the mat. All right, and then another prompt I tried a lot of different prompts and setups with Pancake. He's a tripod who only has one front leg, and that kind of complicated getting this behavior because he can't have weight on one front paw while wiping with the other paw. He has to kind of tilt his weight back onto his haunches, at least temporarily, to wipe with that one front paw. So for him, I tried the digging setups and I had very little success. When I spent time thinking about where do I see him manipulating stuff with his front paw, one thing he does reliably is if he has a food toy that's like stuck in a corner or something, he'll lean back and use that front paw to pull the toy out of the corner. And so I simulated that on the mat. So here's a food toy and I'm holding it so like it's stuck. And then when he went to paw it, I would capture that. I would say yes and reward it. And there it goes. And then I faded that toy out. That's not the fading example I'm showing today, but if anyone's interested, I could cover that in another session. All right. So does anyone have questions about just those, how to get stuff started, how to get them to make that wiping motion? I'll watch for questions, but in the meantime, I'll just show an example of how I went from having some prop in the beginning of the training to getting rid of it. So I actually had the dog just wiping their paws on the mat. All right, so you want to slowly phase out whatever that prompt is. And here I'll give the scratch board example. I think this is, yeah, I need to go to the video. Okay, so again, here's where we started by when I was using the scratch board to teach Jasper to wipe his paws on the mat. So this is his starting point. He could scratch the scratch board when it's held up at an angle like this. Then I went ahead and put the board on top of the mat flat. Okay, good. Still get some scratching. Then I put the board under the mat, but I wrapped it. I didn't do this at first, but I realized I needed something that was in between. I tried just putting the board under the mat and having the mat spread out like normal, and that was not enough. It was too big of a step. So here I've got the mat wrapped around the board, so it's the same shape, and then I could still get scratching there. And then finally I spread out the mat with the board under it, so he can still feel the board, and it's a little bit lumpy under the mat there. And then finally here, I don't have the board under there, I think, in this video. So just the mat. Oh no, the next example is just the mat. All right. So I would love to hear from you if you try this, if you're trying to get paw wiping started. There are lots of creative ways that you can sort of get this behavior going. A lot of your dogs may just do fine with that digging prompt by when you hide treats under a mat or a towel or something. But if not, think about when your dog already uses their paws either for behaviors you've already trained and can cue them to do, like the shake, or stuff they just do on their own, like manipulating a toy. If your dog doesn't use their paws much in general day to day, then that digging prompt with the treat under the mat might be the easiest way to get it if you can't think of any other ways. And it's probably the first thing I would try anyway, because it's simplest and it doesn't have that many steps to fade out those treats under the mat, unlike some of these other props I talked about, like the toy. You will want to gradually phase out those props, and I hope that the nail board example gave you some sort of an idea of what that might look like. For example, with Pancake's ball that he was pawing, when I faded that out, some of the steps I did were a smaller ball and then a somewhat flatter plastic toy piece, and then a folded up piece of fleece, and then a smaller scrap of fleece, until he was just pawing the mat. All right, folks, that is it for today. Please do share your videos if you work on this and if you try to get some paw wiping. I would love to see it. For free resources that we have online, don't forget to check out our blog, Instagram channel, YouTube channel, Facebook page, or support group. The free support group is that second link there for Facebook. And if what you're looking for is a little more support, like you'd like someone to look at your training videos and troubleshoot with you and help you teach your dog new behaviors, the training membership would probably be a good fit for you. And that's specifically for fearful dogs. That's the link at the end there. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I had fun with this one. Next week, I am off. I'm actually going on vacation. The following week, I'm going to talk about hind paw wiping, which if you've tried to train stuff with your dog's hind paws, you know it's a little bit harder for most dogs. So we'll talk about hind paws next week. All right, everybody, have a wonderful week, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.